Across much of mainland Alaska, from late March into mid-April, was unusually cold. In the interior Alaska, it was the coldest spring since 1924. In south central, not quite as anomalous, but certainly the coldest spring in decades.
We were curious how that would affect bird migration. We expected the birds would still arrive.
We got here and we waited for the songbirds to show up, and then we realized that the conditions were pretty rough all the way down into Fairbanks, even down to the border. Migrants were just getting stockpiled along Alaska-Canadian border and then into Fairbanks. They could not move forth.
Bird species that come to Alaska for the summer kind of got stopped in their tracks. There just was no open water yet. There hadn't been any melting of lakes, still lots of snow cover.
Tok, Alaska did see a fallout of sparrows and Lapland longspurs this spring, where people woke up after a nighttime snowfall and the ground was just crawling with these little tiny birds. The roadways were the only places that didn't have snow covering them. And so the birds were just getting annihilated by all of the trucks and cars going down the highway. People said there were sparrows in their backyards just cramming their bird feeders, their compost piles, just trying to eat anything that they could find. The store ran out of bird seed right away.
The very cold April and into May in Fairbanks meant that the winter snowpack, which was not unusually high as we came into April, simply didn't melt.
Wacky wasn't a term I used. I think just phenomenal or amazing just to see this many birds over the course of a good 3 or 4 week period.
Folks were skiing on the University of Alaska and Birch Hill ski trails right through the first week of May, and that's highly unusual.
About the last week of April, we went down to start watching for the raptor migration. That's the first wave of birds that come through there. And we saw some pretty good numbers down there, a lot of rough-legged hawks and some eagles, but nothing like you'd expect for this time of year. So we went back the following week in early May and just had our minds blown with the number of swans that we were seeing flying over us on this little road into a field. And I lost count at 1,000 swans flying overhead, and we drove around the corner of this road, which we call Swan Corner because they do tend to congregate in smaller quantities there every year. And we're absolutely blown away to see thousands and thousands of swans out there in the field and thousands of geese, more white-fronted geese than I've ever seen in my life.
Well, all of mainland Alaska, down through the Northwest Territories and all the way southeast into the upper Midwest, it was quite a cold March into May period. On the other hand, across most of the western United States, on up through British Columbia, and even into southeast Alaska, temperatures were near to above normal during the springtime. Additionally, over the high Arctic, it also has been a relatively mild spring. Just because it's cold here in Alaska doesn't mean it's cold everywhere.
The raptor numbers were phenomenal too. I swear every 100 feet there was another hawk or an eagle or a falcon in a tree there. We had other birders show up that day. I was texting birders just saying, you have to get down here. I've never seen anything like it. It was just a magical day with the Alaska Range as a backdrop down there and just million swans, it felt like. It was probably 10,000 birds we estimated in the field that day, but it seemed like a million.
Well, what we had this spring, we had large high pressure. Unusually, this large high pressure was over the western Bering Sea. Now, typically we think of the Bering Sea as being home to low pressure systems, but this spring, with high pressure anchored over the western Bering Sea, that allowed northerly winds aloft to persist most of the month over mainland Alaska, and that kept it cold.
If if you're going long distances, you are reliant on each habitat as you enter and leave it. And if things are changing rapidly,
It's color banded.
which we know they are in certain locations on the planet, particularly in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere.
We're now into the beginning of June, so they're probably a few days delayed, but not too far.
So in many ways, the responses
Yep.
of long-distance migrants are true indicators of the health of the planet. And a lot of people are very aware of this and looking into migratory populations.
Oh, she's flying. She just landed.
So extreme events help to ground us in that there's nothing about climate change or climate variability that says that the weather will become less variable. In fact, there's some evidence that as we move into a warmer climate, that, for instance, some places will cool as high latitudes, the Arctic warms. There's increasing evidence that places at mid-latitudes, like, say, the northeast United States, may experience more frequent snowstorms and colder weather. Basically, what happens is the cold air that had been over the Arctic gets displaced south. Now, over the very long time scale, centuries, that will change. But in the short term, in the human experience, climate change and climate variability are very complex and can have sometimes what seem to be unintuitive results of a warming climate, like more snowstorms at mid-latitudes.